taking action for you. This morning on TV 20 Detroit.
What's happening in entertainment with Greg Dunmore of PulseBeat.tv.
Welcome to another edition of the National Association of Black Journalists award-winning and Emmy-nominated PulseBeat with Greg Dunmore. It is said that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And would DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion be considered beautiful or something else? As I stand in front of this salute to the Tuskegee Airmen located in Detroit at the former site of the Detroit City Airport, there has been much controversy concerning the elimination of the history of these noble and regal warriors that were part of American history as they should be saluted during Black History Month.
Donald Trump has just banned Black history from the U.S. Air Force, forcing the removal of the history of the Tuskegee Airmen from the U.S. Air Force basic training curriculum. The Tuskegee Airmen, you may recall, were a group of Black fighter pilots during World War II who bravely fought the Germans and have been honored with presidential medals and others. The military was segregated back then, so it was particularly historic that an African-American group would be so acclaimed. Well, Trump didn't like it, and Trump has now banned the military from teaching about Tuskegee or anyone else.
I signed an order that will end all of the lawless diversity, equity, and inclusion nonsense all across the government and the private sector. We abolished 60 years of prejudice and hatred with the signing of one order, all approved by the United States Supreme Court. We're allowed to do it because we are now in a merit-based world. We're a merit-based country.
Donald Trump's reckless action cut off funding to law enforcement, farmers, schools, child care, veterans, and health care. While he was out golfing, he threw the country into crisis. This is not bold, it's not leadership, it's stupid, buffoonish, childish of exactly what they did.
Lesson plans on the Tuskegee Airmen, including the women Air Force service pilots, will no longer be part of the U.S. Air Force training courses. It comes as President Donald Trump cracks down on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives.
I was both surprised but extremely disappointed.
Toby Hubbard is president of Central Florida's General Daniel Chappie James Jr. chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen, Inc. It's named after America's first Black four-star general who was from Pensacola.
Once folks started to know who the Tuskegee Airmen are, and I say many politicians, civic leaders, and folk in general were surprised to realize that had not the Tuskegee Airmen performed the way they did during World War II, the outcome would have been very different.
They were the country's first Black military pilots. Serving in a segregated World War II unit, they accounted for more than 1,500 missions. Today, only a few of them are still alive, at least 2 in Florida.
If you are looking for a person whose name is the embodiment of courage and honor and valor and discipline and service and fidelity and excellence and steely-eyed fierceness for truth, justice, equality, and the American name, that person whose name you would mention is Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Jeffrey. Whether he was fighting for freedom in the European military theater or for equality in 1944 at Selfridge Air Base for the Tuskegee Airmen to be admitted to the Officers Club. And a year before, my father, the Honorable Coleman Alexander Young, first African-American mayor, longest serving, and the baddest man on the planet, if I do say so myself. All due respect to the current mayor, all due respect, I'll just say. That is my objective opinion. A year before my father led the Freeman Field Mutiny in 1945 as a Tuskegee Airman bombardier. These men in the Double V campaign fought against fascism and Nazism abroad and fought against segregation and discrimination at home and won and were victorious against both. Lieutenant Jefferson was a man who led other great men. And it takes mental toughness and a strong spine to be one of the first Black top guns. But then to fight for black airmen to be allowed to receive equal treatment by protesting the racism in the Army in 1944. That was the reason why my father was a bombardier and not a pilot. He said some things about that. This is a G-rated show. I ain't gonna repeat what he said. He said some stuff. He passed the pilot's test, but racism in the U.S. Army would limit him to become a bombardier. It is my honor to have known Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Jefferson, and I was able to spend time with him talking about my father and black leadership. And I also just wanted to say on a side note, this is the man who won 15 military awards, including the Congressional Medal of Honor.
The history-making Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Jefferson was a fascinating man. Not only was he a consummate pilot, but he was also a man that was very opinionated. There were two movies that were made, one with Denzel Washington and another movie that he had very strong feelings about. And we had a chance to talk to him in 2012. This is also for Lieutenant Colonel Jefferson. The movie Red Tails, of course, received a lot of attention. And there's supposed to be a follow-up, so I want to know your impressions of the movie and what did you like, didn't like, and what about the follow-up?
Number one, the latest movie, Red Tails. Nothing in that movie is true.
6 o'clock.
Period. It's Hollywood.
Let's get them! Where are the damn fighters going? Is there anything left of our escort? Mayday! Mayday! Prepare to bail out!
Period. It's Hollywood. When you come back off of a mission, 6.5 hours long, you're tired as hell. We don't get together, put our arms around each other and yell, we fight, we fight.
To the last man, we fight! We fight! We fight! We fight! We fight! We fight!
That's only done in hockey. When a guy makes a goal in hockey, they all get together, wrap their reps, bingo. You will never fly across a house, see a pretty woman, and blows her a kiss. And then she returns the favor. That's Hollywood. I hate it because before a mission, the leader, the hero of the movie, goes out to a shed, takes a bottle, and gets drunk. What does it tell the world about a black man? He has to be drunk to be a hero. See, you don't realize it, I didn't realize it, until we took a bunch of high school kids to the movie. And after the Q&A afterwards, the kid raises his hand, well, Mr. Jefferson, was your flight leader drunk when you got shot down? Never thought about alcohol being such an impression on young people's minds. At the same time, there was a movie called Flight, Denzel Washington. He did the impossible. He flew an airliner with people on it upside down.
Listen, we're level. We can maintain altitude like this.
What was he under the influence of? Cocaine and alcohol.
Captain Whitaker, on the 3 nights before the accident, October 11th.
October 11th, October 12th, and 13th, and 14th, I was intoxicated. I drank all of those days. I drank in excess.
On the morning of the accident.
I was drunk. I'm drunk now. I'm drunk right now, Miss Block. Because I'm an alcoholic.
A black man has to be a fool to be a hero. Now, the first movie by Denzel Washington was only 10% false. Mrs. Roosevelt could not have flown in the airplane, but that's better. But otherwise, the world still goes on. My impressions, George Lucas made his $15 or $20 million, that's all. That's it.
To their children.
Come on, Junior, fail!
PulseBeat.
All aboard!
There's a new way to travel, and it's one of the oldest forms of transportation. Travel by train. Yes, consider traveling around the United States on Amtrak. Traveling by train is a lot less of a headache than taking a plane, and you'd be surprised how many places you can go on an Amtrak. And there's no passports or IDs needed. Find out how to get where you're going as soon as tomorrow by train. Call the Amtrak Travel Hotline right now. We'll book your trip and email your tickets within minutes. Skip the drive to the airport and skip the lines. Call right now to book your Amtrak reservations. We service most of the United States. Do something new. Travel by Amtrak today. Find out how to get where you're going as soon as tomorrow by train. Call the Amtrak Travel Hotline right now.
Call 855-827-5004. That's 855-827-5004. Again, 855-827-5004.
PulseBeat.
For those of you not familiar with Rouge Park, it's Michigan's largest city park, larger than New York's Central Park, and half again the size of Belle Isle. The Detroit Aero Modelers is one of the oldest park steward organizations in the city. They adopted this field in 1974 and have maintained it ever since. They were a founding member of the Friends of Rouge Park, and they came up with the idea of naming this field after Tuskegee Airman Alex Jefferson, and a community gathering place that will remind future generations of the courage it took to defend our country, even in the face of racism and prejudice.
They fought for my freedom, for our freedom, for my family's freedom, and forever I will be grateful for that. And it is just such a wonderful opportunity to be able to stand in front of you today.
He was a man who not only fought for this country in the war, he fought for civil rights. He fought to change this country, and he did it from the beginning. As a teenager in Detroit, he defied the teacher's advice at Chansey High School and insisted on taking college prep courses as an African American student. And then after going to Clark College in Atlanta and getting his degree, he defied everybody's advice and repeatedly applied to be a U.S. Air Force fighter pilot. His credentials were so undeniable that after repeated efforts, he was accepted into the distinguished Tuskegee Airmen.
Their story began 3 years earlier when 13 recruits reported for training in Tuskegee, Alabama. To date, no black man had been allowed to serve as a pilot in the United States military, a policy they were determined to change. Training was intense, and the men welcomed it. They knew they were making history. A new unit was formed, the 99th Pursuit Squadron, better known as the Tuskegee Airmen, the first African-American combat pilots in U.S. history.
As I mentioned, the Red Tails who flew in the air were not the only ones who helped win the war. So please welcome City Historian Jamon Jordan to add a little context.
The mayor has given you really the background of Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Jefferson. We lost him at 100 years old, just before he turned 101. And maybe many of you know him, know Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Jefferson in many different ways. Maybe you know him as a teacher or principal, or advisor at Duffield, or Halley. I attended Halley, Patton Gill, DSA, Davis Aerospace. Maybe you know him from that history. Of course, we know he was born in Detroit in 1921. His parents were Alexander and Jane Jefferson. His great-grandfather was one of the founders of Morehouse College. Got some Morehouse folks in the house. He went to Craft, and then Munger, and then Chadsey. And as we know, he was the only black student to fight to have a college prep curriculum. Mayor has informed us of this important history he's already fighting in high school. Went to Clark College, which is now Clark Atlanta University, got his degree in biology and chemistry, joined the military in 1942. 1943, he went to Tuskegee and became a part of the 332nd Fighter Group, the Red Tails. 1944, we know he was shot down in France, and he became a prisoner of war, the Germans. And even though he was fighting against Nazis, fascists, they treated him the same as the other Allied prisoners, but when he was freed by the U.S. Army, that was when the U.S. Army subjected him to Jim Crow. So he's fighting both fascism abroad and racism in the United States military and at home.
But I have to say, Lieutenant Colonel Jefferson and the Rouge Park and the Tuskegee Airmen have been a part of my life since I married John Dingell. And the history with John Dingell goes back not to the man I loved, and you all have, when he died, you made sure I was never alone, but goes back to his father.
But the only piece that hasn't been said between the mayor and the historian is how everybody wanted them to be their escort because they kept everybody safe. And the Tuskegee Airmen had the best safety record during World War II. They were such incredible fighters.
What's incredibly important during this time, I think, in our nation is that it's a good reminder as we do this important, beautiful work that we do to honor everybody that served our country here in Detroit and honor our history, is reminding folks that Black history is American history. And again, I had the honor of being able to, with my wonderful colleague, Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, and the 118th Congressional Journal in the Congressional Record will be Legacy of Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Jefferson into the Congressional Record. Into our We also have the granddaughter.
Now is the moment we've been waiting for. So Mayor Duggan, our congressional representatives, the Jefferson immediate family, Airman Stevenson, Austin Brantley is going to join us to unveil the statue.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. More with PulseBeat with Greg Dunmore.
PulseBeat. Travel is getting back to normal. Now is the perfect time to fly somewhere. You can save up to 75% on more than 500 airlines and 300,000 hotels. Use our free service to find the lowest prices we have. You know you're itching to go somewhere, so make this free call right now. We have all the best airline, hotel, and rental car prices all in one place. The best way to get these rock bottom prices is to call.
You ready to put your podcast on iHeartRadio? Yes, your podcast on iHeartRadio. What about Alexa, Roku, Fire Stick, Apple TV, Android, or iPhone? Plus live TV streaming. Get your podcast seen and heard all over the world. Call 313-868-6612. Pre-recorded shows are accepted to be archived. This is a WHPR distribution platform. Download the app from the App Store. Go to WHPRTV.com. Channels available for lease 24/7 on Roku, Fire Stick, or Apple TV. Coming soon, subscription and pay-per-view.
Also,
Block time is available. Get yours. Call 313-868-6612. That's 313-868-6612. Executive producer R.J. Watkins. Program director Henry Tyler. 107.5 FM WGPR HD2. RadioWeCanSee.com.
What's happening in entertainment with Greg Dunmore of PulseBeat.tv.
If you like what we're doing, please tell a friend, or if you want to see what we've done again, go to PulseBeatGlobal.com. That's PulseBeatGlobal.com. You can also go to our PulseBeat TV YouTube channel and you can revisit what we're doing. And once again, you can tell everybody that we're doing something that is so exciting that they wouldn't want to miss it. Remember PulseBeatGlobal.com or the YouTube channel PulseBeat TV. Thanks for telling the world about it. PulseBeat. Although flying a plane as a pilot is a serious endeavor, it's lots of fun, and not just for the fellas. Girls just want, I should say, ladies just want to have fun too.
I was the first African-American female to graduate from the flight tech program at Kent State University. I was the first African-American female pilot hired by Northwest Airlines. And I was the first African-American female pilot to become a captain for Delta Airlines. I'm a captain on Airbus 320. I love international flying. Delta just bought some Airbus 350s. It's a beautiful brand new jet, and I would love to be a captain on the 350 one day and fly international. I loved flying international when I was the first officer on the 757 and 767, and I'd like to go back to doing that, but in the big seat in the big plane. I think as a young woman, I was really lucky because I was just always fascinated with airplanes. I always thought how neat that they even get off the ground. And I just had parents that never discouraged me. And I even had a teacher in high school that had an airplane and mentioned it and was able to go on a flight with him and a couple of my friends. And I was just hooked after that. And watching the Blue Angels fly at Cleveland Burke Lakefront Airport, it was just something that I thought, wow, how neat to be able to do that. I didn't learn until I actually decided that I really did want to be a pilot, that my dentist had been a Tuskegee Airman. Theodore Mason was my dentist in Cleveland, Ohio, and I remember when I was talking about aviation, my dad said, you know, Dr. Mason was a Tuskegee Airman. And I said, what? I had no idea. So that was, maybe he was planning little things as he was cleaning my teeth over the years, little, subliminal messages or something, but that's just something. There are so many of those guys that came back from fighting in the war, and they're just all brilliant people. That's why they were in the program in the first place, and they're really the hidden heroes, in our world. I think that the most important thing for young people to realize is that whatever you want to do, you can do it. Find somebody that's doing it and ask them how they did it. And just get some tips. And your path may not be the same, but at least you're getting some knowledge and some education. And just realize that if it's a passion for you, that you really should go for it, because there are always going to be tough times. And when you're doing something you really love, then it's easy to go to work.
I love seeing all the planes. Like, I've never seen planes like these in real life. Like, I've just seen this in the movies. So it's really nice. Like, the plane behind me is so like that's crazy. Like, I've never seen that before. And the fact that people can just fly, learn how to fly these, or learn how to fly a plane, that's crazy to me.
The tails on our plane were painted paper red so that anybody the United States Air Force recognized who was flying those planes. And they knew if the tail was painted red that it was the Tuskegee Airmen, who weren't known as the Tuskegee Airmen then. They were the 332nd Fighter Corps. They didn't become known as the Tuskegee Airmen until a fellow by the name of Charles Francis in 1972 decided to, and that was a couple of years, that was maybe 10 or 15 years after the war, decided to write a book about the African-American pilots in World War II. And for one name, he knew that they all got their training in Tuskegee, Alabama. So he called the book The Tuskegee Airmen.
Harry Stewart is special in that he shot down 3 German aircraft. And then he came home and participated in the 1949 gunnery meet. That is significant. We celebrate Top Gun through Tom Cruise and Top Gun movie, but the first Top Guns were Tuskegee Airmen, African Americans, 1949. They won the competition and were prevented because of segregation from going to the awards ceremony. They ushered him into the back of the hotel. They took a picture with the trophy, and that's what you'll see on our website and other websites. The 4 of them standing next to a trophy. This is an awesome responsibility and an honor to curate the Tuskegee Airmen National Museum.
Although it is now being said that the Tuskegee Airmen and teaching the importance of their history in the Air Force was never going to be cut out, it is still very confusing.
Now the Air Force is restoring the use of training videos about the Tuskegee Airmen after a short-lived attempt to edit courses to align with President Trump's dumping of DEI initiatives. Senior Pentagon reporter Louis Martinez joining me now. So, Louis, why would the training videos of Tuskegee Airmen misalign with Trump's rollback of DEI initiatives in the first place?
Well, Kara, this video is being played during basic training. Essentially, that's when a lot of the, what we call DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion training takes place. And it's only a few hours, actually, in what is like months worth of training, because President Trump had issued an executive order that ordering a review of all DEI across the federal government and actually putting a stop to it. That's exactly what the Air Force did. And so they looked at all of their training programs and they suspended them. And so it just so happened that this video was being played during those classes. Now, what we have today is that that did not happen, according to the Air Force's top general, General Allen. He is saying that he's calling it a rumor that this video was actually ever removed. What he said is that I put in place a review immediately in keeping in line with the president's vision. And now we are continuing to play this video as part of our basic training. Now, note, he says basic training as opposed to DEI training. And I think that's part of how this story blew up, is that it was presented as a removal of training from all training, whereas in fact it was just focused on DEI. But again, a lot of concern about this just because of the story, and as you said, the storied nature of this hallowed unit.
The policy of the Army at the time was saying that they couldn't use a black pilot because there were no black mechanics. In other words, they insisted on segregation.
The same year, under pressure from the NAACP, President Roosevelt orders the Army Air Corps to begin training black pilots in Alabama at Tuskegee Institute, made famous by Booker T. Washington.
The forget-me-nots are flowers that remind us of the importance of remembering those who have come before us. Our souls look back, lest we forget. Remember the importance of the Tuskegee Airmen as we continue to know the importance of what our ancestors have done to make this nation a great nation. Until the next go round, thanks for watching.
PulseBeat.